Dear Dr. Abhilasha Singh, the Vice President of Academic Affairs at the American University in the Emirates, Dubai. Dr. Sandesh Sharma, Dean Chitkara Business School, co-host of this conference, conference speakers, session chairs, and dear participants. Greetings and warm welcome to ICMIS-21. This series of conferences was started by Informs in 2013 with the continuous support of Chitkara University, with the focus of management and information system, which is generally organized in Bangkok every year during September. That is, we started from September 2013. Now it's like 2021. We have completed 8 years. This is 9th year of the conference, and due to the current pandemic, it's converted to the online mode. Three common requests of a video conference which I would like to make to everybody. Participants are requested to keep mute unless they are speaking. Please use your correct name on screen. I can see some names which are now also, which may be which cannot be in the correct name. So please correct the name. Next is like, please keep your video on. And without taking much time, I would again welcome all of you for this the International Conference on Management and Information System, ICMIS-21. And I would request Dr. Sharma to say a few words on the journey of ICMIS and chair the keynote session by inviting Dr. Abhilasha Singh. Please, Dr. Sharma.
Thank you very much, sir, for the invitation and another edition of ICMIS 2021. We welcome Dr. Abhilasha Singh, our keynote speaker for the conference this year, and Dr. Abhilasha is associated with us since long, and she's part of ICMIS in many ways. She has been a guiding support, and she has always been encouraging conference, for quality interventions in area of research in the different fields. Dr. Agarwal, ICMIS Informs, Dr. Gupta, and Chitkara Business School, Chitkara University. When we started with this conference 2013 years back, we were very clear that we may be very few in numbers in this conference, but our discussions should be qualitative. That means that when a researcher is presenting some work that he or she has done already or doing at that time, should get a real kind of a value when he or she participates in this conference. I mean, the research should go to a next level after attending this conference, and the discussions should be qualitative. Discussions should be in favor of a good research and a quality research, because it's a very demanding issue nowadays. And we all will agree that a good researcher can be a good academician, and ultimately student success in our university is our core responsibility. And student success can come if a faculty has three important things to his credit. One is the foothold of good fundamentals, concepts, and second is the research, and third is the practice. So I generally say that teaching, research, and practice, three things together makes you a complete faculty. So if I'm only a researcher, I cannot teach in the class. I don't think so will go for long. And if I'm a teacher and I cannot research, again, I will not be a good faculty in the classroom. But if we add practice to both, then probably we can really excel in the field of education, and students can get great success. So ICMIS, the entire focus is to have qualitative interaction among the like-minded people. So we all are like-minded. I mean, we have decided to come together on a same platform. Due to pandemic, we are on virtual space, and I'm sure that our keynote speaker, Madam Dr. Abhilasha, will put some light that how the things are happening due to in pandemic time. But again, our purpose of holding this conference still stands same and firm, and that is the and it's only and only quality. To introduce our keynote speaker with all our participants and the guests of the conference, Dr. Abhilasha Singh. Dr. Abhilasha, ma'am, is a staunch supporter of quality education with a academic excellence and unwavering dedication to the success of students. Academic affairs at the American University in the Emirates, Dubai. She also serves as an executive board member and country director of UAE at the International Higher Education Teaching and Learning Association. HETL, it's known popularly. Throughout her distinguished career, she was engaged in a series of academic administrative positions at various institutions and have been engaged in providing strategic directives at senior leadership role and ensuring its implementation with determination. Recipient of many awards and accolades, including amongst the most coveted Global Indians 2021 award. She's also passionate about research that I just explained that resulted in many published articles in esteemed journals of high repute, in good journals, and in frequent invitations to numerous speaking engagements to national and international audiences. She has a PhD in psychology, ladies and gentlemen, India, and a graduate certificate, and she's a certified practitioner of balance code, card, EQ, SHRM, CIPD, and MBTI. Ma'am, we welcome you as a keynote speaker for this ICMIS-21 conference, virtual conference, and I request you to please take charge and give a keynote address so that people can get a good start of this conference and they can they get a direction that how should they do. The topic of this session is pandemic and alienation, impact on higher education new normal. This is such a relevant topic, and I'm very sure that all of us, all the participants, and all my colleagues, those who have joined the conference, they will enjoy the session of Dr. Abhilasha Singh, ma'am. Ma'am, over to you, and welcome once again.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thanks a lot for that wonderful introduction. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Agrawal, for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to be a part of ICMIS. The journey started, as you mentioned, long back. And then the good part is that sometimes we start new things, but then we are not able to continue that. But regardless of whatever challenges were, I can see that the journey is still going on. And it's a wonderful platform. There are few people, but then of course the platform gives enough opportunity for everyone to discuss and to take their, to present their research. I was really impressed last time because I can see that some of the research scholars were presenting, and it's really good to have them and to give them a platform where they can discuss. You rightly mentioned one point, and I would like to emphasize that again, that teaching, research, and practice. So those who are the part of the academic fraternity or those who intend to join, it's really very important for you to understand that teaching and research they complement each other. So if you are a good, wonderful faculty, but you are not having any research contribution, probably you are not bringing what is happening in the industry, you're not current, and that's not coming in the classroom. So the students will not be highly employable in the market. And it's vice versa. So you can be an excellent researcher, but you are not able to communicate to the students in the right way. So that skill is also required. I always keep telling the faculty members that please note that teaching and research, they complement each other. So you have to probably focus on both. And I know it's very challenging. And most of my faculty members and anywhere in the world, they do a research only with the sole objective of getting promoted to the higher academic rank. But that should not be the sole objective. So I don't want to spend more time on that because I've been asked to speak on something else. And I hope that there will be some takeaways for you after this session. So welcome all of you. Welcome to the International Conference on Management and Information System, ICMIS-21. It is organized by International Forum of Management Scholars and Chitkara University. And both International Forum of Management Scholars, I have been associated with them for a long time. I've been also associated with them for with AIMS, and it's always a pleasure to discuss with to have intellectual discussion with Dr. Om Gupta, who is not here probably today, but we all started the journey together, and Dr. Agrawal, Dr. Sandhi later joined. So thank you very much for this opportunity. The topic of discussion today is pandemic and alienation, impact on higher education in the new normal. And all those, ladies and gentlemen, like honorable participants, distinguished educationists who have joined from different parts. I mean, I'm really greatly honored to be a part of this conference. And I deliberately wanted to discuss a little bit on pandemic and alienation because we keep talking about pandemic. And I'm sure like before we started the conference officially, Colonel was mentioning from that, you know, he want to do a lot of research on Zoom now, Zoom fatigueness. He mentioned this term. And I can see that everyone is so focused on talking on the impact of pandemic on higher education. Somewhere we are probably missing the point that alienation is also affecting all of us. We are not able to socialize with each other. Gradually, we hope that things will become, there will be a new normal soon. But for sure, there is an impact on higher education. If you look at the evolution of the people and technology, both have played a very significant role in certain aspects of the new normal in the years to come. So we need to envision from now the new normal for digital life to be in the future. And considering the changes that are being set in motion by the pandemic and the way the societies are responding, and they will respond probably in future. My question to all of you is that, can we predict these changes will lead to a life in future, which is better for most of the people, or mostly worse for most of the people, or perhaps not too much different for most people than the life was that at the time the pandemic began? This is the question I had in my mind. And with this, I would like to probably take this topic and talk about alienation in context with the pandemic, the global impact of the virus, alienation and crisis management, the impact of the pandemic over the lives of young ones, the pandemic education, mental health, mental well-being, the learning ability of the students. You know, I can see it has really impacted the learning ability of the students, the education in pandemic, and also beyond the lessons learned. So these are some of the points which I would like to probably emphasize more in this presentation. Now, alienation and the pandemic, if we look at some of the major issues which were there, I mean, with all the dismays that pandemic has caused, the pandemic crisis also allowed the humanity to reflect on itself. And I'm sure you all will agree with me. And assess its points. You know, in a short period, the world has found itself very apprehensive about attaining the goals they set, if they would lose their jobs or keep their freedom. Alienation has defined as a withdrawal or separation of a person or person's love and care from an object or a position of previous attachment, from one's societal values and family. There are various forms of alienation, I mean, like professional, social, and cultural among the current issues. However, each one of them, if you see, need to be defined separately along with the pandemic. I mean, if I have to share, I'm just sharing my experience, what has happened with my family. I lost many loved ones, but I also had my immediate family members hospitalized for 45 days, 2019 March, where people were not even aware of what pandemic is all about. And that's why it compelled me to start thinking about it. So that part was always in my mind. And I just thought that probably we need to discuss that part whenever we get an opportunity. So if you look at the alienation in times of pandemic, it was like a process, in which negative emotions and experiences are linked with extended isolation. So we were isolated for almost 45 days. I had one of the immediate family members in hospital. My both sons were hospitalized. One of my close family member, she was also with us. She was hospitalized. My entire family were in different rooms in one hospital. So a lot of negative emotions and experiences are linked with this extended isolation. Now, it is how the new normal is built for the world. So social distancing, employees forced to work from home. Just to share with all of you that there is a transportation allowance given to the employees when they come to the workplace. But that transportation allowance was taken back now. It was no more given because people started working from home. So there was a challenge, emotional challenge, but there was also financial challenge, right? Social distancing, it really created major issues for people. Distance learning for students. In short, people of all generations are socially isolated from all relations. So the pandemic basically left many people alone for a very long period of time. So likewise, the authorized institutions could not take necessary measures to prevent people from experiencing the process of alienation. So highlighting the social, cultural, and economic differences in the worldwide experience of the epidemic, it is significant to emphasize that the need for localization and adopt new cultural approaches, focusing on the new definitions of the new normal by local and global actors are required. So COVID-19 and its impact on the global society, if you look at that, debates have been going on since the outbreak. Last end of February, or let us say March 2019, and its potential impact on the society worldwide. So much of this debate has been centered on the alteration of people's social interaction, physical and mental well-being, social and economic diversions, jobs and the nature of work, like national, local, and global politics, climatic changes, and the globalization of services and goods, the evolution of people and technology. And that's why it becomes so relevant to the theme of this conference, like International Conference on ICMIS, management, and of course, at the same time, information system. So the evolution of people and technology, they both play a major role in some aspects of the new normal in the years to come. So the question is, what do people envision the new normal for technological life will be in the years to come? So what will be the new normal all about? So if you look at alienation and crisis management, and let me spend some time to talk about like what is basically a crisis. So a crisis is actually defined as an important threat to the operations, and it can have a negative consequences if it is not handled appropriately. And all of you have at some point of time in your life, I'm sure you have experienced crisis. Crisis can lead to three types of threats. It can be financial loss. I gave you one example that there was a financial loss. People were not given, some of them were not working in their home country, by the way. So they were not also given in a country like UAE, they were not given accommodation allowance, transportation allowance. So there was a financial threat as well, financial loss as well. Public safety and reputational loss. Many of the companies, the senior positions were made redundant. The organizations became more flattened. The organization decided that there is no need for the physical space. So there was a public safety and reputational loss. COVID-19 created all these type of threats for the business worldwide. It basically disrupted the workplace as employees had to look and adopt to new ways to work in no time. Within a couple of days, we actually prepared the entire, like logistically, we prepared for remote teaching and learning in 2 weeks' time. We were on a spring break. All the faculty were on a spring break, and we as administratives, we were working and preparing for all kind of logistics. So the business leaders had to find ways to safeguard the health of their employees. That was the prime objective. The HR teams, they developed new modes of communication with the remote teams. We started working with MS Team, Zoom, of course, Zoom was there, and the life, it went on. So in short, all these unexpected changes, it impacted the well-being and the mental health of employees. They felt stressed, worried, insecure. The worries were losing jobs or the viability of their company. A lot of SMEs were closed. And many of the new SMEs, especially in UAE, they were open. And we recently conducted a research, and we noticed that the more and more SMEs were open in free zone because people were losing their jobs and they wanted visa to be to stay in the country. So they started opening their own companies so that they can get the visa as well. So and losing jobs or the viability of their companies and the responsibilities of looking after their families was also important. So the employees' minds seem to be preoccupied with several problems such as personal health, job security, childcare, homeschooling, right? Stress and mental health, work-life balance, family health, managing their schedule, social isolation, productivity, visibility of their employer, all of the above points. But I mean, you can see that all these points, whether it is public safety, reputational, crisis management, all these points, it points, I mean, these aspects points towards the management of this crisis in the time of great stress. So the effect of, pandemic was also noticed on the young life. The pandemic drastically affected the lives of many. I mean, while we started appreciating the socialization aspect, which was, we were not appreciating, these things earlier. But it also drastically affected the lives of many, including the lives of young people. Universities and schools, it was all shut down. Exams and other events were postponed. In India, the way CBSE exams, many of the CBSE and competitive exams were postponed. The healthcare facilities were limited. Socialization with friends and family was extremely, extremely discouraged. Living under these circumstances and conditions became extremely difficult for the young ones, as their social, physical, and mental well-being was really, really completely disturbed. So with this, another impact was, of course, pandemic impacted the education and mental health. So a very global, or let us say very vital role, which is played by education sector, higher education, of course, but from K-12 to higher education, is providing support to the young people with their mental well-being. They protect their mental health, and there is an apparent connection with trusted adults, let me put this way, and such as teachers. The outbreak of COVID-19 is likely to have like a very long-lasting impact on the minds of global people. This pandemic, it gave rise to some significant areas of great concern, such as education and schooling, and how the measures would be implemented in response to such emergency. So such kind of crisis management, such kind of COVID crisis in future. So the closure of schools not only hindered the learning process, but also had an impact on the mental health of students. The school closures created uncertainty in the short term, and employment and educational outcomes for the future. For those young lives living in a very dangerous situation, the closure of educational institution may represent the loss of a very stable and safe environment which they were experiencing earlier. I also feel like there are a variety of factors that impacted the young people's ability to learn outside the school environment, right? So we always notice that students or learners, they learn a lot outside the school environment, outside the university environment. And it is significant to consider the bearing that they would have on both the academic attainment and their well-being during a time when most of them are not able to learn within the school environment. For example, these factors include like overcrowding, parents unable to speak fluently in English, because the mode of communication in school is English. So when the students were asked to stay home, and especially the school sector, the parents, if they are not able to speak fluently in English, parents and careers not literate enough to the level where they can confidently assess their children. And, the children started experiencing a not very suitable home environment. So that was also another issue which we noticed while we were conducting research. In higher education, universities and colleges always are places where students study and they live close to their peers. We had a very good strategy here. We take the freshmen and we take the sophomores, the senior students and sophomores. And the senior students and sophomores, they act as a peer mentors. If any freshman is weak in any course, so the peer mentors and the sophomores and the senior students, they act as a peer mentors and they support the freshmen. But that was completely stopped then after, because this kind of learning was a very active learning. It was not a passive learning. So all the universities and colleges, these are the places where students, they learn and live close to each other. So there is a cultural buzz. As a student, they come from different parts of the world. And, UAE is completely different. It's very cosmopolitan. There are different kind of nationalities, and it's very with Expo coming and with more than 190 countries coming here, you can see there is always a cultural buzz. And with this cultural buzz, because the students are coming from the unique parts from different parts of the world, there is a unique ecosystem which got affected significantly by the spread of COVID-19, and which created a kind of uncertainty in terms of implications for higher education. So the majority of the universities and colleges around the world, they integrated online form of education, and this shift basically, it proved to be a challenge for all of us. So comparatively, universities which had a bigger setups did not experience much turmoil as compared to smaller universities, which struggled under the weight of the demand. But it is not all doom and gloom. The higher education sector withstood turbulent economic times in the past, and I'm sure it will withstand them again. So in this digital stage, universities and colleges are in a better place today in order, like we matured basically. Over the past 3 semesters, we are now mature. We can say that probably we are in a better place today in order to provide students with easy access to the internet to continue their studies online. Just to give you an example, that we had a course called draping. Draping in design is so different. We have a college of design, and the course was like draping. There was a course in College of Media and Mass Communication, multimedia production. And it is so difficult to teach a student how to drape, with Zoom or with MS Teams. And then there were students, they started, and we are talking about 2019 April, we had to basically send some of the laptops to the houses of students. We started having a different kind of one-to-one session, and we developed a 3D model to teach students how to drape. So there was really challenges when we started in 2019, but then we mature now. Now we are in 2020, I'm sorry. But 2021, we are mature enough now. So the challenges started 2020 March, but over the period of last 3 semesters, we are completely mature. So now students are having easy access to the internet. They can continue their studies online. We have started basically offering the courses in a hybrid mode. So things are fine. Now, education in pandemic and beyond, if we see that the outbreak of coronavirus, it resulted in one positive thing. a much greater appreciation for the importance of schools, I can say, which was not earlier. I mean, everyone started, even the children, even the adults, they started appreciating the schools, the colleges, the university. And as the parents, they seem to struggle hard to work with their children at home, especially children who were adolescent or at their, I can say, not little, those who were in their senior secondary or secondary school. Parents were really struggling hard to work with their children at home because of the closure of the schools. They started appreciating the entire schooling system, the entire higher education sector as well, the entire education sector. There was a public recognition of the essential caretaking role that schools and colleges were playing in society. And that reached the peak of success. So as young people, they tend to face difficulty in learning from home. The parents have all gratitude now for teachers. We can sense now that really parents are thankful to the teachers. Their skills, their invaluable role in the upbringing of students have progressed. It is believed to look like beyond these concerns to what may be possible for education on the other side of the COVID-19 pandemic. It isn't easy to think that there will be another moment in history.
There were 2-3 things even I was going to call you.
So it isn't easy. I'm sorry, I will just take another 2 minutes. So if people can note themselves, and then we can open for question if there is time, and it will be Dr. Sandhi's prerogative. So it isn't
no problem, ma'am. No problem.
Thank you. So it isn't easy to think that it will be another moment in history where the central role of education in the social, economic, political success and stability of nation is clear and understood by the public. It is time to see how education can evolve stronger from this worldwide crisis than before, and then suggest a path for capitalizing on education's newfound support in every community across the globe. So let's go and see lesson learned. Students, if we see that, what are the lessons learned? Students are getting more opportunities to learn independently at their own pace. Therefore, they are becoming problem solvers in this process. That's one of the most important lessons learned. So no spoon feeding, they started, thinking about themselves as an independent, active learner. For educators working in the schools, personalized learning is the centerpiece of instruction. The educators say, all of us, that this shift to remote and hybrid instruction form has allowed them to deeply develop their commitment to learner-centered approach. So as I was giving you example, like one-to-one session. And this learner-centered approaches was done by building new strategy that shall continue to be applied to all students who can return to even school later on at full capacity. So this type of learning requires flexibility, but the teachers say that they must be quicker by now. So some of the researches which we did that, we did a lot of survey. We were doing actually every month, and there was a survey conducted. So the responsiveness from the teachers was, and I'm using teachers for K-12 as well as higher education, it was expected that they need to be more responsive and more quicker. In schools, there are that are still operating remotely. We have some schools here. They are still operating remotely. The teachers have to take individual student situation and limitations at home under consideration. So there are some criteria they are taking, and based on their criteria, based on those criteria, they are approving. Like there are certain students who are asthmatic. So any student who is asthmatic is allowed not to come to the school premises because of they cannot wear mask and they have breathing difficulty. On the other hand, those schools that have resumed physical classes have to be ready to switch their mode of instructions and deliver their lessons in a more tech environment. So with this lessons learned, I would like to conclude that even if COVID-19 was different in many ways, if you look at the history has no shortage of such examples of epidemics, and other emergencies. It would also be unwise to assume that COVID-19 will be the last emergency of its kind, and that there shall be no need for future generations or our own to learn the lessons of 2020 and 2021 and beyond. So there will be many more such situations in future, and we must be prepared for those kind of crisis situation. So with these words, I once again thank Informs and thank Dr. Agrawal and Dr. Sandeep for giving me this wonderful opportunity, and over to you.
Ma'am, thank you so very much for such a comprehensive understanding presentation on the topic pandemic. And I really appreciate the way you have put up the lessons learned, because all the lessons that you have put across for all the participants is really something which is practical. And the unique thing about this pandemic is that it's global. That means the entire humankind, all of us, being in any continent of the world, all of us were suffering together. I think this is the one thing which made us more resilient, more responsive, and now we are together to fight this kind of a crisis. So the house is open for the question answers or a query, in case of any query, or you want to put across your opinion. And this is next maybe 5 to 10 minutes for any question answer session, in case somebody is willing to speak something. Over to respected participants. Anybody?
Ma'am, may I ask something? I am Arup Das Gupta from Netaji Subhash Engineering College. I missed a small part of your talk, but there was one thing. Since you have conducted a lot of surveys at K-12 and that higher education, what did you feel about the change of evaluation system due to the pandemic? Because that created a lot of difficulty at my end. I am teaching at an engineering college, and the evaluation system gave a lot of headache during this time. Could you please elaborate on that, ma'am?
Thank you for that wonderful question, Dr. Arup, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
yes,
Dr. Arup, thanks for that question. I completely agree with you that the assessment and evaluation was the most critical challenge. So, and I will start with higher education, and if you have question for K-12 also, I can answer that. So what we did, the entire assessment, first of all, the teaching pedagogy was also affected, and I explained that. So when your teaching pedagogy is affected, you have to make certain changes in the course learning outcomes, right? And all these course learning outcomes are integrated with the assessment. So what we do basically, whatever assessments are there, like for example, there are projects, there are case studies, there are assignments, there can be some kind of capstone courses where they have to, like in engineering especially, they have to come up with some product, so there can be some capstone projects as well. These assessments are integrated with the course learning outcomes. So we revise these assessments. Many of the assignments were not appropriate. Quizzes, assignments, we actually asked the faculty member that subject to the nature of the course, you are free to make changes in this assessment. And they made the changes, and they gave actually the opportunity to have more project-based assignment, right? Some of the assignments were changed like to service learning. So like colleges like pharmacy, colleges like medicine, they were asked to participate, and public health, for example, they were all asked to be now visit the hospital and to participate in, for example, PCR test, so they were given a training for 2 weeks, and they were doing that. So the assignments, the nature of assignment for them was more towards service learning. So it was changed. For us as well, we revised many of them as a project-based assignment, as a research-based assignment, where the students, they have to actively conduct research instead of assignment, which was a traditional assignment given to the students. Did I answer your question?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. This is I will definitely endorse Dr. Abhilasha and Arupji. This was a very good question, because assessments, it was I'll say everybody was worried that how to assess. And as ma'am rightly said, that the outcomes, institutions, those they started the continuous assessment. For example, they earlier they used to make 3 assessments. Now they are making 5 assessments in a year. So in different pieces, and the nature of assessments also changed as per the technology requirements, and as per the requirements of the course.
Dr. Sandhir, we are losing you time to time.
We have decided. So wonderful question, and wonderful. Any of other colleague or participant want to discuss something?
Okay, Dr. Sandhir, just to take one minute also, and to answer to Dr. Arup, that for another example, just I would like to give you, Dr. Arup, that what we did, that capstone project presentations and all 400 level courses, because we follow the American system, so all senior courses we can say, or 400 level above, 400, 500 and 600 for the masters, for the graduate students. There was a component which was added, and that was a presentation component, where there was a mandatory presence of an external panelist from the industry. So this was not existing earlier. So while the students were giving this presentation, there were panelists from the industry, and it was a complete like 5-6 panelists were there, and they used to really, I can say, grill the student for whatever work they have done. So students were compelled not only to conduct a research, but to also present it in a way which is like more aligned towards the industry requirement.
Very nice. In fact, I would also like to say that master students, that either the writer can get it published in a very good journal, because that again takes a lot of time, at least 3 to 4 months they take when they work on a specific research regularly. So we have also done those changes. And thank you very much, ma'am. Another thing which I'm out of excitement, I'm telling you, because we discussed the pandemic in a very large way. We just appointed one gentleman as the chief happiness officer, because you touch base the mental health and the health of all learners and the faculty members. So this pandemic actually changed the way we used to live, and I'm sure that together we can actually overcome such kind of crisis. And we do not. We can't say that such things won't happen again in some other form, but at least we can wish that such kind of health crisis at least should not be there, where many people lost their lives, and people should stay healthy. Other problems will keep coming. That's okay. We are strong enough to face all kind of problems, but health issues and where the children and the old age people, they suffered a lot. We would pray to God that such kind of epidemics or pandemics should not come again, and we should not face. I think with this, I will extend a big thank you, and big thank you to Abhilasha ma'am for joining us today and inaugurating the conference with her strong keynote address. And I think we all, as participants, we are geared up for the discussion during the sessions. And on behalf of all the participants, informs, everybody from ICMIS, though are part of our family, we are a family, but we would like to say you thank you very, very much, and we wish you all the best. And we will look forward for your support and mentoring as you're doing right away. Thank you very much, ma'am, for the keynote address. We look forward to your continued support in future also.
Thank you, Sandeep, and thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Over to Dr. Agrawal.
Thank you so much, sir. It was nice to start. Let me give you a brief about brief you with ICMIS-21. This conference is a single-tracked small conference with 3 sessions. Today morning 9 to 10:50, or now it may be delayed by 10 minutes or so. So it will go till 11 o'clock as per India time. Evening 6:10 to 8:20. And tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock to 8:50, 10:50, with a keynote address which we have seen, a workshop which will be conducted this evening, and the 13 papers which will be presented during these 3 sessions. Let me take an opportunity to thank Dr. Abhilasha Singh for sparing the time in delivering a keynote on this current situation. In fact, Dr. Abhilasha Singh, we met during our first conference in Dubai, that's ICTVM. We cannot name it ICTVM 10 or 9 because it was the first conference which was there. And then after, she was with us from next conference onwards in 2008 onwards, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and so on. And last year also ICTVM 20, which was there again. She was well supported of the conference. In the same way in ICMIS also, she is always supporting well. Thank you, Abhilasha Madam, for your great support. This conference we will have now we will have a workshop which will be conducted by Dr. Vasauda and Dr. Suresh Shah from Ganpati University, and on research paper drafting, which is a very basic requirement for publication. And I think for them to plan out a workshop like this. I'm thankful for Dr. A.K. Singh Suryavanshi, Dr. Kishwar Jonas, Dr. Saroj Kaul, and Dr. K.T. Manjunath, who will be sharing certain sessions, all the sessions are today, tomorrow, both the days. A big thanks to Chitkara University and especially Dr. Sandesh Sharma for supporting this conference since 2013. Now it's it's the 9th year. So next year we'll have a giant, a big conference with their support again. My sincere thanks to all speakers and the participants of this conference. And thank you, all of you. I will be now going for the next session with paper presentations. I would like to request Dr. Kishwar Jonas from Perry A&M University, Houston, to take over the charge as the session chair. Dr. Jonas, please.
Good morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure to meet all of you again. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
perfectly fine.
Thank you so much. I have just shared my screen. Are you all able to see my screen?
Sure.
Thank you. So we have got 4 presentations today, and mine has been listed as the first presentation. So I'm going to just go ahead and proceed with my presentation first. The title of our presentation is Investigating the Determinants of Behavioral Outcomes in Mexico, an Experimental Study Among Online Users. We are 4 authors. Myself, a colleague from my university, he teaches the MIS courses, Dr. Mahfouz, and we have 2 co-authors from Mexico. One is Dr. Trujillo, who's from the education side. She comes from psychology and education. And Diana Davila Ruiz is from the College of Business. She also teaches marketing. So basically, this is an interdisciplinary study. We are very thankful to ICMIS-21, to Chitkara University, and to Informs for this opportunity to present our research on this platform. By way of abstract, I would say that this study was conducted to investigate the effects of prior visits to a given website, social media mode, and learning style of internet users on their behavioral outcome based on an online search task. There are 3 independent variables: prior visit to a given website, social media mode, and learning style.
learning style basically reflects how individuals learn a new piece of information, how they process it, and how they incorporate it with existing knowledge. And it has 4 levels, that is the diverger, the assimilator, the converger, and the accommodator. So that is one major chunk of our independent variables. And of course, the other 2 being whether an online user has visited a particular website in the past or not. And social media mode means whether they have been on social media, yes or no. So there are 2 levels, the participatory and the non-participatory. The dependent variable is the behavioral outcome of the users following the task that was completed online. And currently we notice that very little research attention is given to Mexico regarding this topic. The research methodology is a laboratory experiment conducted in a university in Mexico with a total sample of 120 subjects. We had an experimental design. It was a randomized complete block design with 8 block treatments, effects, assigned randomly to subjects. The data analysis of results and contributions of the study are presented and interpreted within the framework of Kolb learning style theory or experiential learning mode. And these are our keywords: learning theory, social media, interactivity, experimental design, consumer behavior, and Mexico. I'll speak a little bit to the literature review. We conducted an experimental study and we investigated the effects of prior visits to a given website, social media, and learning out style on the internet users on their behavioral outcome based on a search task. These were our research questions. Would a prior visit to a given website result in greater behavioral outcome compared with no prior visit? Would social media tools such as wikis, blogs, YouTube, Facebook, etc., result in greater behavioral outcome in the user's mind regarding the information of a task compared with the non-participatory users? And finally, which user learning style would result in greater behavioral outcome about a given search task? Is it diverger, assimilator, a converger, or accommodator? So this was our very basic research model. So in social media mode, we had participatory and non-participatory. Learning style, we have got 4 different learning styles, and we are looking at impact on the behavioral outcome. Actually, there's quite an interesting Kolb's learning style theory video, and I've just put the video link over here. And of course, you can just do 3-minute Kolb and you can watch that video on your own. I just put it in because it's quite interestingly expressed. So Kolb's learning style theory of 1984 is basically the experiential learning model, how users learn and process a new piece of information and incorporate it into existing knowledge. Individuals learn and solve problems through 4-stage cycle: concrete experience, reflective observation, resulting in formation of abstract concepts, and then finally, the testing of hypotheses through active experimentation. So basically, Kolb proposes 2 dimensions. The first is how a person reacts to new information. So we have a continuum that is concrete experience all the way up to abstract conceptualization. The concrete experience is senses and the feelings. The abstract conceptualization deals with logic and reasoning. The second aspect is how we process new information. So the reflective observation to active experimentation continuum, that is the other aspect. Reflective observation means just watching something passively. Active experimentation means trying new things. So this is a diagrammatic expression of Kolb's theory, and you can see that there are 2 continuums on two separate axes. So let us examine these four learning styles. The diverger is one who uses their own senses and intuition. They are passive observers reflecting on events rather than in participating, and they are typified by psychology students. The assimilator is the most detached and is a passive observer. Perception is through symbolic representations and thought, and the typification at the highest level is of astronomers. The converger is the actual flip side of the diverger. They think about what is experienced based on reason and analytical skills. There's direct participation involved, and the highest typification is mathematicians and engineers. The accommodator, in some respects, is similar to a diverger. They rely on senses and intuition, but at the same time, they want to get their hands dirty, you could say, through active participation. And they are typified by people in social work, in education, like us, and history students. Social media, we said, has two modes. Participatory means that the user has active role in the process. Participatory social media subjects use social media tools like Blackboard from the forum and the chat, and from Facebook. The non-participatory were the subjects they were asked not to use any social media at all. So here we have the propositions. We did a very simple presentation of hypotheses by way of null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. The reason we did that is that the literature basically is divided. There are several authors that are in favor of Cold's theory, and there are also several authors that do not agree with Cold's theory, and so on with the other variables. So we just went ahead and put our hypotheses in terms of null and alternative hypotheses. And I will give you a moment to just go through these. The first three sets deal with the three variables. The last set deals with the interaction of social media mode and learning style on behavioral outcome. So to recap the research methodology, we had a laboratory experiment in a Mexican university that allowed us to have tighter control and more rigor. The three independent variables were prior visits to a given website, that is yes or no, social media mode with 2 levels, learning style mode with 4 levels, and so we had 8 block treatments, that is 2 by 4. The experimental design was a randomized complete block design, and learning style was the blocking factor. And the data analysis was done in, through descriptive, because this is an exploratory study. And this is just a listing of the treatment combinations. That is the learning style quadrant, social media mode, and this is the combination. So the treatment combination in plain language is diverger with non-participatory, diverger with participatory social media mode, and so on. Let me describe the procedure a little bit. The subjects were assigned to learning mode based on Code's learning style inventory, that is the LSI instrument, after filling out the instrument at the beginning of the experimental session. Then they were assigned randomly to one of 2 social media mode treatments to complete a search task for a product of their choosing online. Participatory social media subjects communicated about the experience via social media tools. And then they filled out a questionnaire to measure their behavioral outcome of the search task. The dependent variable was behavioral outcome, and it was a composite of 3 items. Site revisit, that is likelihood of revisiting the site in the future. Recommendation to others, likelihood of recommending to their friends and family and so on. And the future intention to buy, that is likelihood of intending to purchase an item from this site in the future. The sample, as I mentioned earlier, comprised 120 undergraduate students in a university in Mexico. Each treatment had 60 subjects for social media mode, that is 60 participatory and 60 non-participatory. And I will show you the demographics of the cycle, very much as expected of young adult, college-going undergraduate population. I will come back to this point as we move forward with the discussion. In the classroom, it was an education class and 100% of the students in the class were female. So in our study, we have no males covered at all. Age 19 to 21 is 69%. And of course, 100% of them were bachelor degree seeking. There's some restriction of the internet usage. You see a big proportion, 63% for social media, and the mode for 30 to 39 hours online is 28% of the sample. And here we have a diagram that shows the breakup or distribution of learning styles. And the largest chunk was 44 participants, that is 37% of the sample for converger. And then we had about equal for accommodator and assimilator, and the diverger was the smallest proportion in the sample. These were the distributions of the treatment combinations. And we ran a reliability test. We were very, very happy with the results. We came up with 0.92 Cronbach's alpha. And I thought that was a very, very healthy figure. Also, we achieved construct validity by conducting a thorough literature review. We used previously validated scales in the literature, reliable instruments. We did exploratory factor analysis using principal components analysis with equimax rotation. Internal validity was achieved via controlled laboratory experiment. And to achieve external validity, we took college students who are heavy online users, and so our results by and large are generalizable. The study has a pedagogical or teaching context, that is the learning style. So college students would be an appropriate sample, and all of that goes towards achieving external validity. For exploratory factor analysis, we kept a factor loading as long as it was 0.5 or above. And so that way we knew that we are headed in the right direction. Here is how the factors fell. And you can see all the items have fallen very neatly in their loadings. And so we have the different learning styles, and then we have the behavioral outcome. Now here are some of our results. Behavioral outcome was measured on a Likert scale with strongly disagree at 1 and strongly agree at 7. And we had N of 120. The highest scale item is recommending the site. You can see over here 5.8. I would recommend this site to others. That is the mean with a standard deviation of 1.5. These are ANOVA results, very healthy for prior visit to a given website. And you can see over here the F value 27.97 with the probability is less than 0.0001. And for site visit, you can see the F value again. Very, very healthy. Behavioral outcome mean is 5.68. So we can tell that a significant effect of a prior visit to the website was found on behavioral outcome for those who visited the site versus those who had not visited the site. The relationship between a prior visit to a given site and behavioral outcome is significant and positive. That means that this one demographic explains 19.16% of the variance in behavioral outcome. And therefore, respondents who visited the website in the past are more likely to visit it, recommend it to friends and family, and are more likely to make a purchase. And these results support alternative hypothesis H11, and that is stated over here. And what is the implication of this? It means that web developers should make their sites attractive and introduce features that continue to encourage return visits to the site. Let's look at the social media mode. The social media mode with greatest behavioral outcome is participatory. And you can see here they have a mean of 5.8% for those who use social media tools like Blackboard and Facebook. However, when you go to look at the relationships, you'll see a different picture, and we'll come to that. Let's look at behavioral outcome and learning style. The learning style with greatest behavioral outcome is the diverger. They were also, if you remember, they were the highest proportion within the sample. And you can see a 6.1 is the mean for behavioral outcome with a standard deviation of 1.2. So given participatory social media resulted in the greatest behavioral outcome, that is from the previous slide, it shows that divergers, who are basically passive learners, were stimulated by the most interactive social media tools. Now, when you look at the ANOVA results of these two determinants, you will find that you see over here, when you look at learning style, you don't see any significant results over here. The F value is 0.56 and the treatment is 0.26. That does not give us any direction. And if you look at the interaction of the treatment, that is social media by learning style, there too, we do not have a significant F value. And so, although there's a lot of literature that speaks to social media and to learning outcomes, our study did not support any of these hypotheses. So we failed to reject hypothesis H01 and H02 as well as H03. So let's take a look at the research contributions. The study extends existing research on the role of prior visits to websites, learning styles, as well as social media on outcomes. The study adds to the knowledge of online users and consumers in Mexico. The role of a prior visit to a website. Our findings confirm and extend extant research. We concur with classical and neoclassical theories of learning, like Pavlov and others. We have application in consumer behavior as well as in communications. The focus is on the importance of engagement and involvement by creating positive behavioral outcomes. Continuing with our research contributions, the use of social media might be related to feelings, emotions, and gratification, and not necessarily to behavioral outcome. Also, it appears that Cole's experiential learning theory may be interpreted merely as a preference, which need not necessarily translate into behavior. And we have quite a classic study from 2010 by Kobus that supports our finding. Learning style might impact emotions or affect or attitude, but not necessarily behavioral outcomes. Of course, our study also impacts other fields like psychology, education, organizational behavior, consumer behavior, marketing, management, and public policy. When we look at practical contributions, it is clear that our study is relevant to educationists. It is relevant to instructional designers of various learning platforms. Also, our research will be valuable to students themselves, give them a better understanding of the factors impacting their own behavioral outcomes. Our research will encourage frequent visits to online course resources. And also, our study will be useful to developers of commercial sites and applications. Of course, our study was not without limitations. We had a limited sample size, 120. We had an experimental setting that might give you better control and internal validity, but may not 100% represent real-world scenarios. The subjects or the sample comprise college students, and it may not be generalizable strictly to all populations. But of course, as I said earlier, they are heavy online users and they do represent internet users. Our sample had a lot of homogeneity. As I said earlier, that 100% of participants were female. On the other hand, literature indicates that there is some role of gender as a determinant in behavioral outcomes. So maybe a future study would cover both male and female populations. And here are some helpful resources. There was a request earlier on the chat. I'll try and copy paste this onto the chat. So in case anyone is interested, they can access these resources. So I have one bunch here, and then I'm going to go back to the top, and maybe I had another link in my earlier slides, and I will put that link also. Here we go. So that was in brief our presentation. I'll be very happy to take questions. Of course, we have to be mindful that there are 3 presenters or 3 papers to be presented after mine. So let me know if you have any questions and comments. If there are no questions or comments, I will proceed to invite our next presenters. And these will be demystifying and interpreting the mottos of the Indian Armed Forces. And the presenters are Gaurav Bhatia, Arundhati Bhatia, Abhimanyu Bhatia, and Ranju Bhatia. May I invite these speakers to come forward with their presentation? I've stopped my share.
Good morning, Dr. Judas.
Yes.
Good morning. Good morning, Dr.
Good morning,
Judas.
good morning and welcome.
Thank you very much, madam. I am Colonel Gaurav Bhatia. And before I start, I must compliment you on a very, very detailed and a very interesting presentation. Thank you very much. Gave me a lot of ideas of how to do a presentation better and how to do research better. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's nice to be appreciated, Colonel Bhatia.
You've taken the name of 4 researchers, ma'am. I'll start by sharing my screen, if you permit, and
Yes,
we'll continue with our presentation.
There you are.
Can everybody see the screen?
I can see it, sir.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm Colonel Gaurav Bhatia, and I have the proud privilege of being the presenter for this paper that has been written by 4 researchers, all 4 situated in different cities of India. The topic is very, very different than what you would probably encounter in an academic and research-oriented conference. But it has a lot to tell us, and it has a lot to for all of us to grasp and take back. So the topic is demystifying and interpreting the mottos of the Indian Armed Forces. The researchers are self, Arundhati, who's a legal researcher at the Delhi State Legal Services Authority in Delhi. Abhimanyu is a management scholar currently working with Frank and Faber at Ludhiana. And Ranju is an educationist currently in between jobs. The manner in which I have engineered this presentation today is in 5 major heads. We start with the abstract and introduction and end with the inferences of the study that we carried out over a period of nearly 22 months. And most of this time, if you would believe me, was taken to collate and collect the data set for the research and for the analysis. As we go along, you will probably understand that why did it take such a long time. The abstract actually tells us what exactly we are wanting to achieve after this research. The idea came to me while I was studying at the Indian Institute of Management, Lucknow, and the professor teaching us strategy, he spoke of the unifying action declaration of corporates. And it suddenly made me think that if a corporate entity could have a unifying action declaration, then all Indian armed forces have something similar, which we refer to as the motto or the rationale for the existence of any unit. You would have seen that in these past few months where COVID pandemic has had us on the back foot, the armed forces have worked in a quiet and self-assured manner and have always answered the call of duty. So as a mark of respect and having served more than 3 decades in the armed forces, I thought of utilizing my researcher skills to carry out a research of all the mottos of the 3 services and obtain a sense of what exactly do these mottos mean to the soldiers who live and die for upholding this motto. The keywords that I had chosen for this paper are COVID-19, motto, unifying action declaration, Indian Armed Forces, unit, battalion, regiment. The motto, as I just now kind of told you about the unifying action declaration or the motto of the armed forces, is the rationale or the raison d'etre of the existence or the uniformed existence of any soldier. They utilize the motto, they utilize the flag, and they utilize the connection with the identity of the unit to gladly lay down their lives and give the supreme sacrifice. We are all from the academic fraternity and we have a few corporates amongst us. No job description in the world will tell you to lay down your life. This is the only job description which expects you to lay down your life and do it smilingly. So bringing all this together, I utilized qualitative data analysis tools to carry out analysis of these mottos. I will go over the manner in which we did it soon. Like all good researchers, I went to the root of the word motto, and in the dictionaries, they both meant the same. It was a guiding principle. It was a phrase that expressed a belief or purpose in a larger thing than yourself. Starting from 1580 till 1796, the word has had 4 different versions or 4 different avatars, as I would call it. The Italian, the late Latin, and the Latin. All of them are actually meaning the same. I draw your attention to the right bottom of the screen. It is a proverbial pithy maxim adopted by someone as a rule of conduct. The motto is what defines the people of that unit. You will soon realize what I mean when I show you the data set. By way of literature, I could find very little on mottos. I could find a little bit upon Unified Action Declaration, and the 7 characteristics as identified by Kanta Butra are now shown to you on the screen. They start with brevity, clarity, future orientation of that particular attribute, how stable it is, what are the challenges that are envisioned in that motto, is it abstract or is it specific, and does it have the ability to inspire. All the mottos that we had in the data set were evaluated on these shared attributes, and the inference was actually what I knew all along it would be. We will get to that in due course. The data set that I could collate over a period of nearly 22 months was primarily because the data set is not available in one single repository. The armed forces are comprising of the Indian Army, the Indian Air Force, the Indian Navy, and the Indian Coast Guards, all of whom had one motto each, but the Indian Army, surprisingly, had a different motto for each regiment, for each battalion. And that is where the interesting part actually became more interesting. So we had a data set of about 121 mottos collected from the armed forces of India. And the sample which I now show you is divided into 9 columns. Starting from the left, we have the name of the regiment, when was it active, where was it raised, what is the motto, what is the language of the motto. And since the language of research was English, so we had to convert and translate each motto to English. And some of the units had war cries, and these were also translated to English. I draw your attention to the yellow columns in the center of the screen. You find the language of the motto identified by the first alphabet. So, for example, serial 1, service before self, is in English. The serial 4 for Indian Navy, Shano Varun, is in Sanskrit, and it means, may the Lord of water be auspicious unto us. Similarly, when we went down to the individual units and regiments, we found that many languages were being used. For example, at serial 5, the Gurkha Rifles, who have their center at Sabathu, utilize Gurkhali as their language for the motto. It reads Kayar Hunu Banda Marnu Ramdo, which means better to die than live like a coward. And their war cry, Jai Ma Kali Ayo Gorkhali, which means Hail Goddess Kali, here come the Gorkhas. We move on to the second set of dataset sample where I show you a motto in Punjabi for the Sikh Light Infantry raised in 44 at Fatehgarh in Uttar Pradesh. Their motto says, Deg Teg Fateh, prosperity in peace and victory in war. And the war cry, Jo Bole So Nihal Sat Sri Akal, which means he who cries God is truth is ever happy. Coming to the next one in Urdu for 15 Armored Regiment raised in 85 at Mamun, Jang Ke Jawahar, jewels of the battlefield. And another one from 16 Light Cavalry, which is the oldest regiment in the Indian Army, which have the motto in Tamil, Ayyappa Govind Muruga Vetrivi Veravi, O sons of Shiva, brave and victorious spear. And the last one is my own regiment, 50 Armored Regiment, raised as late as 1989 in Ahmednagar, which has a simple Hindi motto, Digvijay. It means victory in all planes and directions. Having shown you a sample of the data set, I'm sure I have moved you enough, but I want to get you back to the academic world, and I want to show you some little research that we carried out on the languages which were used in the mottos of the Indian Armed Forces. They've ranged from Urdu, Tamil, Punjabi, Latin, Gurkhali, obviously Hindi, English and Sanskrit are always there. As is shown on the screen, 52 regiments have mottos in Hindi and only one each in Tamil and Punjabi. This did not come as a surprise to us, but it is quite surprising for us to see that there are 2 Latin mottos and there are 10 English mottos also. Moving on, going back to Kantaputra's attributes, we were looking at clarity and brevity in this second data set that I show you. How many words did that motto actually expand to? So starting with the minimum of 1 word, like my regiment, Digvijay, we went up to a maximum of 7 words, which were there in the motto. But the maximum number of mottos were just 3 words. 60 of them, nearly 50%. And the balance ranged between 1 or 2 or more than 3. I'll allow you a moment to have a look at this graphic. Coming to how did I do the actual analysis? Now, what I did that after having evaluated all the mottos, I utilized qualitative data analysis tools to carry out a frequency analysis of the words that were used in these 121 mottos. The screen shows you the word, and after that, you are shown the frequency of that word as it appeared in this particular data set. So I have 2 screens for this. The first one from Alpha to Mike, and the second one with decreasing order of frequency. Now in this, there were many prepositions, conjunctions, etc., which I removed. And after that, we carried out, using the Kantaputra's model, we divided this data set into 5 or 6 different thematic areas. This is a slightly busy slide. I'll try and showcase I hope it is visible now. You had the topics divided between thematic areas, and each thematic area was taken based on the Kantaputra's model. They varied from victory to religion to death, dishonor, and enemy and dishonor. When we calculated these frequencies across these thematic areas, the 6 thematic areas are shown to you on the screen. You have victory, country, duty, death, religion, enemy, and dishonor. It came as no surprise to me, having served for 3 decades in the army, that victory and country were the most important thematic areas which were repeated ad infinitum in these mottos. You had 112 count for victory, a 51 count for frequency, and 47 for duty. If you notice that scant regard is being paid to enemy, to dishonor, and to death. Whenever death was mentioned, it was death with a purpose. It was death for a larger cause. And religion, by virtue of being India, it has to be a part of our daily existence. Having seen these, I move on to the actual inference that I drew based on the Kantaputra model. Some of you must have seen this phrase of Naam Namak Nishan. At the end of the entire study, I came to the surprising conclusion that Naam, which means or stands for the honor of the individual soldier and that of the unit, Namak, which identifies with loyalty, and loyalty not only towards their leader, to the unit, but to the nation as a whole. And finally, Nishan, the pride in the unit flag, the badge for which we fight, the badge for which we gladly lay down our lives, the regimental colors as they are called in English. All these people who make the supreme sacrifice smilingly, they are doing it for the triad of Naam, Namak, Nishan. And the scant regard to death, enemy, and dishonor was something that I always knew, but I was very happy to see that this inference was born by the analysis of all the mottos that we analyzed during this study. This is where I will close my presentation. If there are any questions, I will take them on. But before that, I wish to show you a word cloud that I created of the complete data set, which is in the center top. And for all the 6 thematic areas, word clouds were created to give us a sense of what are the actual words which identify with that particular thematic area. I will leave this on the screen for all of you to have a look and feel proud that we are all Indians and we have the Indian Armed Forces standing for helping us in all our requirements and needs. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, I'll gladly take them on.
Thank you, Colonel Bhatia. That was a really very different, a very unconventional kind of a presentation for a typical research conference. I salute you for picking up this topic and shedding light on all of these mottos that have to do with the Indian Armed Forces. Surely all of us are more knowledgeable for your presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. If there are any questions from any of the audience, I'll be glad to take them on. Otherwise, I'll stop sharing my screen firstly. I hope everybody is suitably motivated and glad.
Absolutely. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, if there are none, if there are any more, please put them in the chat. If there are no more questions, then I will invite the next set of presenters. The title is Audit Committee, Forensic Expertise and Real Earnings Management. And the presenters are Shyam Sundar Tiruwadi and Sheila Tiruwadi. Would you please come forward and present? Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Jonas. Can you see my screen, all of you?
Yes, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Sheila Tiruwadi, and that's my brother, Shyam Sundar Tiruwadi. So we are working on a project which is related to forensic audit committee with forensic expertise and real earnings management. That's the title. And I'm going to, and Shyam Sundar is in the audience, and I'm going to invite him to present the initial part of the paper, and then I will go ahead with the presentation as we move forward. Thank you.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. So I'm going to talk about the introduction and the motivation and hypothesis. So having said that, why did we choose this topic and what was our motivation? First, we looked at the introduction. If you look at the introduction here, legislators, regulators, and policymakers are concerned about the shift from accrual to real earnings management by managers of public companies. And this shift has taken place after the Sarbanes-Oxley Act in 2002. So if you look at this, managers use these methods. There are three methods of real earnings management to manipulate earnings. Those methods are, one is abnormal production. You produce more than what is normal. Abnormal cash flow from operations. You give deep discounts to increase sales, and abnormal discretionary expenses, which is cutting down on your administrative expenses. So all these will lead to profit, but only in the current time period, because they will come to affect your bottom line in the future. Now, moving to the hypothesis, moving to the importance. Real earnings management is of great concern by regulators, investors, and legislators. This topic demonstrates the importance of directors with forensic accounting expertise and the effect in curtailing real earnings management. Now, importance of audit committees. Why audit committees? Audit committees are composed, as you know, it's composed of board of directors, and they play a critical role in providing oversight and serving as a check and balance in the company's financial reporting system. The audit committee serves as a liaison between the management and the external auditor to objectively assess the quality of financial reporting, and then they provide reports on the efficacy of the financial statements. Now, according to Roy Chowdhury, real activities manipulation is nothing but they are departures from normal practices, operational practices, motivated by managers' desire only to mislead stakeholders in believing certain financial reporting goals have been met in the normal course of operations. These departures do not necessarily contribute firm value, even though they enable managers to meet the reporting goals. So which means that the managers do this because they need to meet their goals for various reasons, like their bonus. So what happens here is certain real activity manipulation methods such as price discounts, reduction in discretionary expenditures, are possibly optimal actions in certain economic conditions. However, if managers engage in these activities more extensively than in normal, given their economic circumstances, with the object of beating an earnings target, they're engaging in real activities management or manipulation. Now, the objective of the study is to see the effect of audit committee directors who have forensic expertise. Do they constrain real earnings management? Motivation. The motivation for us to choose this is because of the growing importance of audit committee to various stakeholders, concerns by Securities and Exchange Commission legislators, investors, and regarding manipulation of earnings. And finally, limited research and audit committee directors with forensic expertise. This is one of the main motivation for us to dwell into this topic. And if you look at the literature review for earnings management, Cohen and al. In 2008 found that managers of public firms switched from accrual to real earnings management. So after SOX, especially after SOX, this has become a predominant technique used by managers to meet their earnings target. Then Vishwanath in 2008 studied the association between board characteristics with real earnings management. He found that there's a negative association between board independence and real earnings management. Then Lin and all 2009 found the audit committee independence, expertise, and size are associated with low earnings management as measured by their abnormal accruals. This was even more noticeable when there were government officials on the audit committee. Cohen and Zerovin 2010 found that firms are involved in accrual and real earnings manipulation around seasoned equity offering. The switch to real activities manipulation more, especially after the SOX. Zhang 2012 investigates reasoning behind switching firms between accrual and real earnings manipulation different intervals. They find that managers are usually involved in real earnings management during the fiscal year, wherein they have time to manipulate the earnings using accrual, and then later using accruals based on the consequences of using real earnings management. Sun and all found that has examined the relationship between independent audit committee characteristics and real earnings management. Their findings show that real earnings management through overproduction is constrained when the audit committees have accounting financial expertise on or long board tenure. Trivedi and all 2021 found that the presence of audit committee female chair constrains real earnings management. Now, this was our the regression model which we used. So we
I can take over from here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I can, methodology we actually followed Vishwanath in 2008, which my co-author discussed earlier, to investigate the associative relationship between audit committee directors with forensic with or without, which is a dummy variable, and real earnings manipulation. So this is our model. So the dependent variable is three different, as my co-author explained, three different categories of real earnings management, and this is our variable of interest, and some of them are control variables. So basically, how do we measure forensic expertise? As I said earlier, it's a dummy variable. So we would like to first find if a audit committee is a subcommittee of the board of public companies, and so we'll find out whether the audit committees has a CFE, is the person CFE certified or not. So it could be at least one director or one or more directors should have a CFE. So if they have the CFE, certified forensic expertise, then it's a dummy variable. So we'll mark it as 1, else 0. So the dependent variable, as I said, is real earnings management, and the variable that we're going to look at for forensic expertise is the following. And the other variables is audit committee number of meetings that they have in a year. Size is usually how many audit committee directors are there in the audit committee. Firm size is the size, it's usually the size of a firm is going to be measured by market value of equity. Board sizes, how many board members are there. Market to book, the ratio of market value of equity to book value of equity. Debt is the company having any leverage else. So if you mark it as 1, else 0. Litigation, if a company is in particular sectors like pharmaceuticals, computers, electronics, retail, software, otherwise we mark them as 0. So this is also a dummy variable. Net income, which is going to be measuring performance. So we measure it by net income divided by total, I meant ROA, return on assets, which is a measure of performance. We're going to measure it by net income divided by total assets. And as my co-author explained, we did use the 3 proxies for real earnings management. In this particular presentation, we actually did only a preliminary test using only one particular measure, which is abnormal production. We haven't done the other 2, but with this particular measure, we did find a negative association. So sample was collected from, the sample was S&P 500 firms for the period 2009 to 2011. And we used financial variables from CompuStat and audit committee variables from institutional shareholder services and from SEC Edgar databases. Some of them had to be hand collected. We used proxy statements from SEC Edgar. So preliminary results actually showed that in the presence of a forensic expert on the audit committee, earnings management is constrained for one measure, which is seen in the slide here. So it's significant, negatively significant, and some of the control variables are also significant. So which shows that having a audit committee member with forensic expertise does constrain earnings management. Obviously, this data is going to use only US firms. So this data cannot be generalized across other countries because each country has their own regulatory requirements. Any questions or comments?
Ma'am, may I ask something slightly unrelated? While
Sure.
I do not claim to understand the research itself, frankly speaking, I understand little of this topic, but there was a very important point that Dr. Shyam Sundar mentioned during the beginning slides. He said that the managers are almost forced to such measures after that SOX protocols to satisfy, I would say, I am saying this word in a very feudal sense, please don't mind. Their managers are forced to such measures to satisfy their masters. Their masters are loading unrealistic financial goals on them, and then they have to take such semi-legal, let me call them semi-legal if there is a word like that. They are forced to use such semi-legal alleyways to save themselves and all. So since you have presented this from a regulatory perspective, is there nothing that the regulatory bodies can do to check the corruption at the source itself? I mean, the people
I forgot to mention that this is very less detectable, because what they're actually doing, I should have mentioned it when I did say that they are using 3 measures. Okay, first is let's take about abnormal production, which I actually did the preliminary results on. What they mean is they overproduce, so the per unit cost of goods is less. So overproduction, nobody's going to question overproduction, right? So that's going to be less detectable. Similarly, abnormal discretionary expenses, anything which is deviating from the normal is going to be abnormal production, abnormal discretionary expenses, and abnormal cash flows. So when you say abnormal discretionary expenses, advertising, miscellaneous, and other administrative expenses are going to be reduced. Now, that is also less detectable, because when you reduce that for that particular period or year, it's going to increase the profit in the income statement. So that's also less detectable. Similarly, abnormal cash flows, what the managers actually do is they provide deep discounts. And there's something called channel stuffing. Let's say you placed an order for 10,000 items, and I send you 20,000, say 200,000 items at the end of the year. So basically, as per US system, once I ship the goods, I'm going to recognize revenues. As per accrual-based method, I recognize revenues. Once I recognize the revenues, I've met the target for that particular year. At the end of the year, I've already met the target. So by the time you come back, you're my customer, you come back and tell, we're in 2021. So by 2021 end, I'm shipping you the goods more than what you asked for. So now you're going to come back to me and say, hey, I didn't ask for 200,000. I only asked for 10,000 items. Oh, that's going to be an error. So can you send it back? So by the time you send it back and I put in a return order, it's going to be 2022. So I've already met the target. So these measures are less subtle and less detectable. So it's not that easy to, although researchers and academicians and regulators are aware that this kind of things are going on, but they're not able to exactly say it's illegal because they do it so subtly. It's not very obvious.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Any other questions or comments?
I think that was really a good presentation. Of course, as they often say, that there's a lot of space between precept and practice. And for all that we have written on paper, everything is not perfectly translatable into control and action. So I guess in many fields, we learn to live with it. And anybody who drives on any road in any part of the world knows that there's a speed limit, but you can actually count how many people are violating that speed limit. So I guess that's just something that we have to live with. I want to thank both of you. You worked well as a team in making this presentation. It has been very enlightening. I would now like to invite the presenters of the last session for today. And that's another interesting topic, the Edge Theory Framework, a systematic review of happiness through cross-cultural perspectives. And the presenters are Sunita Singh Thakur Kshatriya and Soumya Kshatriya. Over to
Thank you
both
very
of
much.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Are the presenters here, Sunita and Soumya? Dr. Octavian, has there been any change in the program?
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, we can. Dr. Agrawal,
Yeah,
are
there
we
is.
all on the same page here?
I think when you have got the old schedule, instead in place of Dr. Sunita, there is another presentation which is there. It's from Dr. Octavian Vladu from Romania. So,
Yes.
so I'll just send you the details of the presentation, or
Welcome, Professor. Welcome, Professor. I will make a change of my schedule. You've taken over the screen. Please progress with your presentation. We are waiting to hear from you.
Yeah. Hello. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Vlado Octavian, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the National University of Political Studies and Public Administration in Bucharest, Romania. Today I will share with you some insights about strategic communication. And to start, I would like to ask why strategic communication? At the process level, communication can support for governance reform by influencing opinion, attitude, and behavior changes among leaders and policymakers, mid-level bureaucrats, and citizens. In other words, we talk about the political will, organization will, and public will. At the structural level, communication links citizens, civil society, the media, and the government, forming a framework for national dialogue through which informed public opinion is shaped. The evolution of communication for development has mirrored broader shifts in theories and models of economic and social development. For much of the post-World War II period, communication for development was first informed by the modernization paradigm, which sought to transform traditional societies into modern Western societies through the transmission of attitudes, practices, and technologies. Communication initiatives adopted the diffusion approach, which uses communication to carry out of transfer of information by means of large-scale media campaigns. The first one, modernization paradigm. This paradigm is facilitating the transformation through information transmission in mass media of pre-modern and backward attitudes and practices of traditional societies into modern, rational, and Western ways of life. Daniel Lerner's influential passing of traditional society thesis was the thesis that says that mass media exposure allowed people to develop a sense of empathy. And this sense of empathy is the ability to envision and accept new ideas beyond one's local condition and traditions. Top-down, one-way dissemination of modern ideas through mass media that have direct impacts on the attitudes and the behaviors of the receivers. The next one, the diffusion paradigm. This paradigm was taken in the 1962 with the premise that with enough time, tech products are adopted by wider society as a whole. The process by which an innovation is communicated through certain channels over time among the members of a social system. The next one, criticism turning point. The diffusion theory differed critically from the modernization paradigm by recognizing first, the limits of mass media to directly provoke behavioral changes, and the importance of interpersonal channels in the process of adopting new ideas. The participatory paradigm, the modernization paradigm grew in the 70s and in the 80s. The one-way flow of information and communication from the northwest to the southeast were criticized alongside call for greater representation of voices from the south and east. At the same time, there was a push for more participatory approaches to development. This triggered the emergence also of participatory development communication, which aims to empower the community towards collective decision-making and action through enhanced knowledge and skills to identify, prioritize, and resolve problems and needs. Okay, and to show a definition for the communication for development, This is a social process based on dialogue, using a broad range of tools and methods. It's also about seeking change at different levels, including listening, building trust, sharing knowledge and skills, building policies, debating and learning for sustained and meaningful change. This was my presentation for today. Thank you, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for that presentation, Professor Vladu. Are there any questions or comments from participants? Last and final call for comments and questions. I'm very happy that in today's session, we had a spread of interdisciplinary research being presented. My own presentation was from Mexico, and we have a good spread of countries being covered, including the US, India in terms of armed forces, and Romania. We have a variety of subjects being covered in terms of both topics as well as the subjects that have been included in research. This has been really a very enlightening session. I want to congratulate all the participants for taking the time to present and use this platform of ICMIS-21 as a platform for their research. I'd like to thank Dr. Gupta and Dr. Agarwal and all the other organizers. I'd like to close the session. Dr. Agarwal, if you have any more words, would you kindly please chime in?
Dr. Keshajunath, thank you very much for chairing this session. And we are closing this session now for now. And we'll be meeting again in the evening, India time 6:10, or US time, like Houston time 7:40. So 7:40 a.m. in the morning for Houston time, or India time 6:10 p.m. we'll be meeting. Maybe after 8 hours from now, 9 hours from now, we'll be meeting again. So good night or good day to all the participants, and see you in the next session, which we'll have. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you.
Thank you.